Sometimes, life hits you harder than you ever imagined. When you've given everything to your family, when you've sacrificed for them, only to be left alone in the end, it feels like a betrayal that cuts deeper than any illness ever could. But what happens when the people you love most turn their backs on you in your darkest hour? Well, for me, that's when the game changed. Make sure you subscribe and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I've always been the one who held everything together. When my husband was alive, I made sure he had everything he needed. The house was spotless, the kids were fed, and everything functioned like clockwork. I was the mother, the wife, the rock, the unspoken glue that held our family together. But then my husband died. Suddenly, I was no longer the woman behind the scenes. I was alone. My children were grown and had their own lives, their own families to care for. They didn't need me anymore. It didn't happen overnight. I could feel the distance growing between us, slowly at first, like a slight chill in the air, one that you can't quite place until you realize you've been cold for hours. They came around less, called even less, and when they did, their voices were distant, distracted. I began to realize something I had never truly accepted before. I was no longer important to them. And then I got the diagnosis, cancer. I was scared, of course, but what scared me more was the thought that I was going to face this alone. I've always been the one who cared for everyone else. Now, who was going to take care of me? I kept the news from my kids for as long as I could. I didn't want them to feel obligated to show up, but I also needed to know, did they care enough to be there when I needed them most? When I told them, they promised to visit. They said all the right things, but promises are easy to make when you're not staring down the barrel of your own mortality. Days went by, then weeks, and the visits didn't come. I heard excuses. I'm too busy. The kids have activities. I have work. And the silence grew louder. By the time I was admitted to the hospital for treatment, I was already used to the feeling of being invisible. The doctors and nurses were kind, but I wasn't sure that was enough. I wanted my children. I wanted them to come and hold my hand, even if it was just for a moment. But I sat in that sterile room, my heart sinking with each passing day, and the silence stretched on. That's when I met Lila. She was assigned to the bed beside mine, a young woman, no more than 20, thin, fragile, but with a fire in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. She was fighting cancer too, but hers was in a much less advanced stage. She was much younger than I was, but there was something about her that instantly made me feel connected. She started talking to me right away, telling me how she was doing, how she was feeling. She didn't act like I was just another patient to her. She talked to me like a person, like I was more than just someone on the edge of death. Lila made me laugh. It was a quiet laugh at first, then a real one. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed like that. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd really felt anything except pain and disappointment. But Lila's energy, her zest for life, it was infectious. She was constantly cracking jokes, and despite the fact that both of us were lying there with IVs and machines hooked up to us, she managed to keep things light. She started helping me with little things, helping me get to the bathroom, getting me water when I couldn't reach it. She didn't even seem to mind. It was the first time in weeks I'd felt like I wasn't completely alone. I didn't realize how much I had needed that, how much I'd been missing real human connection. My children had been absent, and my heart ached from it. But Lila, despite everything she was going through, was right there with me. She was showing up in a way they hadn't. The days passed, and with each one, I found myself looking forward to seeing Lila. I started confiding in her, telling her about my life, my regrets, my fears. I told her about how my kids had stopped visiting, how they had slowly slipped away. I told her about my husband and the life we had shared. Lila would listen intently, always offering a word of comfort or simply a shoulder to lean on. In return, she told me her story. It wasn't easy for her to speak about, but she did. She'd lost her mother when she was young, and her father was never part of her life. She had grown up in foster care, bouncing from one place to another. No family, no stability. I could feel the pain in her words. I understood it more than she knew. My children had never abandoned me in the way she had been abandoned. But in that moment, I understood the emptiness she carried inside. It was a pain I recognized, and though we came from different lives, different backgrounds, we were both seeking the same thing: connection, love. And in a strange way, Lila became the family I had lost. She became the daughter I had always wanted, the one who saw me, who cared for me when no one else did. I never asked for it, but in a way I couldn't have been more grateful. But with that gratitude came an unsettling truth, the realization that I would never have that from my own children. They had shown me, in their absence, exactly how much they didn't care. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep waiting for them to care. I needed to make a choice. And I knew, deep down, that Lila, this young woman who had nothing, had given me everything. I had to do something for her, something that mattered. That night, as I lay in bed thinking, I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. I would make Lila my heir. It wasn't just about money or property. It was about giving her something real, something solid, something she had never had before. And in doing so, I would be making a statement, not only to my children, but to myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something for me. The next morning, I would have the papers drawn up, and I would change everything. But I didn't know how they would react. I didn't know how my children would take it. But I was ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. The weight of my decision felt heavy, but I knew it was the right one. I thought about it all night. The decision had come to me so suddenly, but in my heart, I knew it was the only choice I had left. I couldn't keep waiting for my children to care. I had given them everything, but now, in my hour of need, they had shown me that their priorities didn't include me. So, the next day, I did it. I made the call to my lawyer, and we started the process of changing my will. I had never expected my life to end up this way, but I knew I had to do what was right for me. For once, I had to make a choice that was about me and not them. I told Lila about it the following morning, and her eyes widened in surprise. She looked at me with disbelief, as if she didn't understand how she had come to be the center of everything in my life. But there she was, my rock, the only one who had been there for me. I didn't care if my children would be furious. Lila didn't want to accept it at first. "No, Martha, I can't take this from you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not—" "Lila," I interrupted gently, "you have no idea what you mean to me. I can't keep waiting for my kids to show up. They've had their chance. But you've been here for me when they weren't. You've shown me love, care, compassion, something I haven't felt in a long time. You're the one who matters now." She stayed quiet for a moment, as if trying to process everything I was saying. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, the reluctance to accept anything from me. But I couldn't help it. This was my decision. I needed to give her something real, something tangible to show how much I appreciated her presence in my life. I didn't want to think about how my children would react. I didn't want to imagine their anger, their resentment. For once, I didn't care. I had spent years being there for them, and they hadn't once shown up for me when I needed them most. Now, they were going to have to face the consequences of their neglect. The lawyer called that afternoon to confirm that the changes were made. My children would no longer inherit anything from me. Lila, this young woman who had been with me for only a short time, was the sole beneficiary of my estate. I didn't even want to think about how my children would react. I just had to believe that, in the end, I had made the right choice. The days following were a blur. The pain of the treatments, the sleepless nights, the endless waiting for any sign that my body would fight back. It was all consuming. But in the midst of it, there was something different. Lila was there, every moment. She helped me with my meals. She encouraged me when I thought I couldn't go on. She became a constant presence in my life, a symbol of hope when I felt hopeless. It was strange how, after all these years of giving my life to my children, I could find such peace in the company of someone so much younger, someone who had no obligation to care for me. But that was what made it so special. Lila wasn't here because she had to be. She was here because she wanted to be. Then, one afternoon, my children finally called. It had been weeks, but they had apparently decided to reach out now that they'd heard about the changes in my will. My eldest son, Mike, was the one who called. His voice was tight, his tone cold. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, barely hiding his frustration. "About what?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "We found out about the will," he said bluntly. "You can't be serious. You're leaving everything to her? To that girl?" His words stung, but I didn't let it show. Lila was sitting beside me, holding my hand, and I squeezed it tightly for support. I'm very serious, Mike, I replied. I've thought about it. And yes, I've left everything to Lila. She's been there for me in a way none of you have. You all promised you'd visit. You all promised you'd support me. But where were you when I needed you most? I could hear him fumbling with his words, trying to find the right thing to say. Mom, you don't know what you're doing. You can't just give everything to her. You're being manipulated. We're your children. We deserve that money. Deserve it? I felt the anger rise in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. You deserve nothing. I've spent my entire life giving to you, supporting you. But now, when I need it, you're nowhere to be found. Lila has been there for me, and I'm doing this because I want to. It's my decision. There was a pause on the other end, and I could feel the tension. You're making a huge mistake, Mom, Mike said. We'll talk later. And just like that, the call ended. I didn't need to hear anything more. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going back. But as the days wore on, I couldn't help but wonder how my other children would react. I had always been the one to hold everything together, to keep the family united. And now, I had torn it all apart. But it wasn't me who had done that. They had. They had chosen to ignore me. They had chosen to walk away when I needed them most. And now, they would have to live with that. Lila looked at me, her face filled with both concern and sympathy. Martha, you don't have to keep doing this alone. I'm here. I'll always be here. And in that moment, I knew this was the family I needed. Not the one I'd fought for my entire life, but the one I had found when I least expected it. The one that showed me love when I felt like I had nothing left. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making the right decision. And in that moment, I was at peace with it. But little did I know, the storm that was about to come would shake everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, and the future I had just begun to build with Lila. I had made my choice, but what would it cost me? The days after the phone call with Mike were a blur, but a new clarity settled over me. I had made my decision. I had chosen to stand firm in the face of everything I had endured, to take control of what little I had left. I had given so much to my children over the years, sacrificed everything for them. And now, in my final moments, I wasn't going to let them tear me apart anymore. Lila's presence was a comforting anchor in the sea of my swirling emotions. I remember one evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm orange light across the room, she sat beside me, brushing my hair away from my face, just as a daughter might do for her mother. It was a simple, tender gesture, but it meant the world to me. She didn't judge my decisions. She didn't ask for anything in return. She simply cared for me in the most genuine way possible. In her presence, I felt like I wasn't invisible. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. But as peaceful as those moments were, I knew trouble was brewing. My children hadn't taken my decision lightly, and I could only imagine how furious they were. It was only a matter of time before they would show up at my door, demanding explanations, trying to convince me I had made a mistake. I wasn't wrong. The next morning, my second son, Daniel, came storming into my hospital room. He had a look in his eyes, a mix of anger and disbelief. I could tell right away this wasn't going to be a civil conversation. "Mom, what the hell is this?" he spat, holding up a copy of my new will. "This girl, Lila, is going to get everything." I looked at him, my heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Yes, Daniel, she is. You're out of your mind," he yelled. "You've gone crazy. You can't just give everything to some stranger. You've worked your entire life for that. And now, because she's been nice to you for a few weeks, she gets it all?" I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't back down. "You haven't been here, Daniel. You didn't show up when I needed you. She did. She's been here, sitting by my side, helping me when you and your siblings couldn't be bothered. Lila deserves it. She's the one who cares." Daniel stood there, his face red with frustration. "What about us? Mom? What about your own children? Do we mean nothing to you?" "Of course you mean something to me," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "But you've all shown me that I mean nothing to you. You've had your chance, and you wasted it." His eyes filled with anger, but also something else, something that hurt even more than the anger. I saw guilt. He knew he hadn't been there. "Fine," Daniel muttered, throwing the will on the ground in disgust. "We'll take this to court. We won't let this stand." And with that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat there, a quiet storm brewing inside me. My decision had already been made. But the weight of their response was something I hadn't fully anticipated. I thought I'd feel more empowered, but instead, I felt exhausted. My children, my own flesh and blood, were ready to fight me over what? Over money? Over something I had worked my entire life to provide for them, only to have them turn their backs on me when I needed them the most. Lila stayed silent, as she always did when things got heated. She sat quietly beside me, her hand gently resting on mine. I could feel her comforting presence, but even she couldn't take away the sting of my children's betrayal. "It's going to be okay," Lila said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "They'll realize, eventually, but until then, you've got me, and that's what matters." I squeezed her hand, grateful for her unwavering support. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." But despite her comfort, the truth of the situation hit me harder than I had expected. My children had no intention of accepting my decision. They were going to fight me every step of the way. They had already proven that they cared more about the money than they did about me. I spent the next few days in a haze. The pain of my illness was amplified by the emotional turmoil of my family's betrayal. The constant nagging thought that this would be my legacy, the anger, the resentment, the fight, was unbearable. It was during one of those sleepless nights, lying in the dark, that I made another decision. I wouldn't back down. I couldn't. I had been weak for so long, living my life for others, always putting myself last. I was done. I would fight for this, for me, for the only family I had left. The next day, I contacted my lawyer again. I had to ensure that everything was in place. My children might try to take this to court, but I was ready for them. I had spent my life giving to them, and now it was time for me to finally live for myself. I told Lila what I was doing. I knew she was concerned, but she didn't stop me. She simply nodded and said, "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel so alone. But the storm was far from over. My children were enraged, and I knew they wouldn't let me go easily. They would stop at nothing to get what they thought was rightfully theirs. And as much as I didn't want to hurt them, I knew it had to be this way. The battle was just beginning, and I couldn't afford to back down now. I had made my choice, and now I would face the consequences, whatever they might be. It was only a matter of time before my children came for me again. The days dragged on, each one feeling longer than the last. My treatment continued, but with every passing day, the tension surrounding my decision grew. I could feel it, thick in the air, hanging over me. I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, my children would reconsider. But with every phone call, with every email, it became more and more apparent that they weren't going to let it go easily. It wasn't just about money to them. It was about control, the control they thought they had over my life, over my decisions, and I had taken that from them. They couldn't handle it. The next blow came when my youngest daughter, Emily, showed up at the hospital unannounced. She had always been the one who pretended the most, the one who used to make all the promises. She was the one who had always called me Mom, with the sweetest tone, as if it were enough to make up for the empty visits, the hollow promises. She walked in that day with a look on her face that I knew all too well. It was the look of someone who had been sent to fix things, but I wasn't going to be fixed anymore. "Mom," Emily started, her voice shaky but still laced with an edge of authority. "I came to talk to you about what you've done." I sat up in my hospital bed, a slow wave of exhaustion washing over me. I had been through this already, and I wasn't interested in hearing what she had to say. "I've made my decision, Emily," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "And it's final." Her eyes narrowed. "You're making a huge mistake. You're letting a stranger control your life. She doesn't even know you, Mom. How can you trust her?" I felt my heart racing, but I stayed calm. "She knows me better than any of you ever have, Emily. She's been here for me, helping me in ways none of you have. I'm done being invisible to you, done being your second choice." Emily's face twisted in frustration. "Mom, don't say that. You know we love you. We just—" "No, Emily, don't you dare tell me you love me," I interrupted, my voice rising despite myself. "I haven't seen love from any of you for a long time. You come around when it's convenient for you. You think a few half-hearted calls and I'm sorries can fix years of neglect. It's too late for that." She recoiled slightly, as if I had slapped her, but I wasn't finished. Lila has been here every day. She's been by my side. She doesn't need anything from me. She cares about me for who I am, not for what I can give her. And that's why I've made her my heir. Mom, please, Emily said, her voice breaking as she knelt beside my bed. You're not thinking clearly. You're letting this girl manipulate you. I could see the tears in her eyes, but they didn't move me. The tears were about her loss, not mine. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying because I wasn't following the script she had written for me. No, Emily, I said, my voice softer now, but resolute. You're the one who hasn't been thinking clearly. I gave you everything. And in return, you gave me nothing but empty promises. I'm not going to keep pretending anymore. There was silence between us for a long moment, heavy and suffocating. Emily stood up, wiping her eyes quickly. You'll regret this, she muttered, her voice thick with resentment. I won't, I said firmly, feeling a strange calm settle over me. You'll see. She left without saying another word. I didn't watch her go. I didn't want to. Lila walked into the room a little while later, her expression full of concern. How did it go? She asked, sitting down beside me. I sighed and shook my head. She's furious. They all are. But I'm not going to back down. Lila nodded, her eyes filled with empathy but also something stronger, support. You don't have to do this alone, Martha. You don't have to face this by yourself. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. She was my family now, whether I'd ever had a choice in it or not. I know, I whispered, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. But the truth was, I had no idea what was coming next. I didn't know how much farther my children would go. I didn't know how ugly this fight would get. But I couldn't worry about that anymore. I had made my decision, and no matter what, I wasn't going to let them take that from me. The battle was far from over, but this time, I wasn't going to let them win. The days felt like weeks. My hospital room, once filled with the quiet hum of machines and the soft shuffle of nurses, now felt like a battleground. I could feel the tension building with each passing day. My children were furious, and I knew they wouldn't just walk away quietly. They would fight for what they believed was theirs, and that meant fighting me. Lila stayed by my side, as she always did. Her presence was a constant, a reassuring reminder that there was still good in the world. She helped me with my treatments, ran errands for me, and made sure I was eating, doing all the things my children had once done without a second thought. Lila didn't care that I was sick, or that I had nothing left to give her. She cared about me. The calls from my children continued, each one more heated than the last. Mike, Daniel, and Emily. Each one tried their best to convince me that I was making a mistake. They all tried different angles. They played on my guilt. They tried to remind me of the good times we'd had, of the love we'd shared in the past. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Their love wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. One afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Mike. Mom, are you really going to do this? Are you really going to let her take everything? He demanded. His voice was shaking with anger, and I could hear the frustration in his words. I'm not letting her take anything, I replied calmly. I've made my choice, Mike. I'm not changing my mind. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him taking a deep breath, trying to collect himself. You're breaking our hearts, Mom. You're breaking our family apart. I could feel the weight of his words, but I didn't flinch. You all broke my heart a long time ago, I said quietly. You stopped being a family to me. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Now, I'm doing what's right for me. He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. This is going to ruin everything. We'll never forgive you for this. I didn't say anything for a long moment. There was nothing left to say. My decision was final. We'll see you in court, he added coldly before hanging up. I put the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. It was over. The fight had already begun. I looked over at Lila, who had been quietly listening from the chair by my bedside. They're going to take me to court, I said, my voice a little more fragile than I wanted it to be. Lila didn't hesitate. She stood up and walked over to me, placing a gentle hand on mine. We'll fight this together, Martha. I'm with you. Whatever happens, I'm not leaving you. I nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over me. I had never asked for this kind of loyalty, yet here it was, in the form of this young woman who had been through so much herself. Days turned into weeks, and the fight raged on. My children hired a lawyer, and I did the same. The papers were filed, and soon enough, We were heading toward a legal battle that I knew would tear apart whatever was left of my relationship with them. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to let them bully me into changing it. It was a Monday afternoon when I received the summons. My lawyer called to tell me that my children were formally contesting my will. It was official now. I couldn't say I was surprised, but it still stung. It felt like they were tearing away at the last shred of dignity I had left. But even in that moment, I felt a sense of calm. I wasn't going to lose this. I had made my decision, and I was going to fight for it, no matter what. Lila sat beside me as we discussed the next steps. "I'll be here every step of the way," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "You don't have to do this alone." I took her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I know. I'm lucky to have you." The court date was set for a few weeks later, and I braced myself for the storm that was coming. I had no idea what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the quiet, invisible mother. I was done being the one who always put others first, always sacrificing herself. For the first time in my life, I was going to fight for myself. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. My lawyer worked tirelessly, filing paperwork, gathering evidence. My children, of course, did everything they could to undermine me, accusing Lila of manipulating me, claiming I was of sound mind and not capable of making such a decision. They twisted every word I said, trying to make me out to be an irrational, confused old woman. But I wasn't confused. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I wasn't going to let them make me feel small anymore. The night before the court date, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Lila was sleeping in the chair beside me, her presence a comforting warmth. It was strange, the peace I felt in that moment. I had spent so many years waiting for my children to love me, to see me, to appreciate me. But now, for the first time in so long, I didn't feel like I needed their approval. For the first time, I was doing something for me. And that thought, that small spark of freedom, gave me the strength I needed to face what was coming. I wasn't going to lose this fight. Not this time. The courtroom was waiting, and so was my fate. The day of the hearing arrived faster than I expected. I woke up early, the weight of the day heavy on my chest. It was a beautiful spring morning, the sun shining through the hospital window, casting a soft glow on everything around me. But even the sunlight couldn't ease the tightness in my stomach. Lila was already awake, sitting beside me, her eyes filled with both concern and determination. She had been by my side every step of the way, through the late-night phone calls, the angry outbursts from my children, the endless legal discussions. She was the only one who hadn't let me down, and I knew, without a doubt, that she was going to be there with me today. "Are you ready for this?" Lila asked softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I took a deep breath and nodded. I don't know if anyone is ever truly ready for something like this, but I've made my choice, and I'm going through with it. Lila squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this. You have me." The court was scheduled for the afternoon, and I could feel the anticipation building inside me. My children had already arrived, of course they had, eager to fight for what they believed was rightfully theirs. My lawyer had assured me that I was in a strong position, but I couldn't help the nagging doubt that crawled into my mind. What if I had made the wrong choice? What if I was about to destroy the last chance at a relationship with my kids? But those thoughts were fleeting. I knew deep down that I had done what I needed to do for myself. They had abandoned me. They had left me alone in my time of need. They didn't deserve what I had left. Still, it didn't make it any easier. By the time we arrived at the courthouse, my hands were clammy, and my nerves were on edge. Lila stayed close to me, offering quiet reassurance as we entered the building. My children were already inside, seated on the opposite side of the courtroom, their faces tight with frustration. Mike, Daniel, and Emily sat in the front row, glaring at me as if I had committed the ultimate betrayal. I couldn't meet their eyes. The anger in their expressions was too much. The courtroom was filled with a tense silence as we waited for the judge to arrive. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the noise deafening in my own ears. Every part of me wanted to turn and leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere. But I couldn't. I had to see this through. When the judge entered, everyone stood. He was an older man, his face lined with experience. He looked down at the papers in front of him, then glanced up at the room, his eyes landing on me. "Martha Johnson?" he asked in a neutral tone. I nodded, my voice betraying none of the emotions I felt. "Yes, Your Honor. Your children are contesting your will." Do you understand the nature of the case? I do, I replied, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking slightly. The judge nodded and gestured for us to sit. The hearing began. My lawyer spoke first, outlining the situation, the will I had drafted, the decision to leave my estate to Lila, and the fact that my children had been largely absent from my life during my illness. My lawyer made it clear that I had the right to make these decisions, and that there were no legal grounds for my children to contest the will simply because they disagreed with it. But my children weren't about to let it go that easily. Mike was the first to speak. His voice was tight, his anger palpable. Your Honor, my mother has lost her mind, he said, his eyes never leaving me. This girl, Lila, is manipulating her. She's taken advantage of my mother's sickness. This decision is not the result of a sound mind. We believe the will should be invalidated. I felt a wave of heat flush through me, my heart pounding in my chest. I had been prepared for this, but hearing him say it out loud, hearing the accusation that Lila had somehow tricked me, felt like a knife to my side. Lila squeezed my hand gently, her presence a quiet strength beside me. I'm not manipulating anyone, she said, standing up to address the court. Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight of conviction. Martha and I have formed a bond. I have done nothing but care for her. She's made her own decision. I have no interest in her money. I only want to see her happy, healthy, and at peace. She chose me because I was the only one there for her when no one else was. I didn't ask for anything. She offered it because she trusts me, because she knows I've been there for her when her children weren't. The room was silent as Lila spoke. I saw a flicker of doubt in my children's eyes, but they quickly masked it with more anger. Daniel stood up next, his voice thick with frustration. This is outrageous, Mom. You can't seriously be considering leaving everything to a girl who's not even part of this family. We're your flesh and blood. We're the ones who should be taken care of, not her. Daniel, I said, my voice stronger than I had expected. You haven't been here for me, not when I needed you most. I'm sorry, but you've made your choice. I'm making mine. The courtroom grew even quieter, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I saw the flash of hurt in my children's eyes, and for a moment I felt a pang of regret. I had given everything to them. How had it come to this? But then I looked at Lila, sitting beside me, her eyes full of understanding and care, and I knew this was right. This was the family I had now. The judge cleared his throat and looked down at the papers in front of him. He then turned his attention to me. Martha, he said, his voice stern but compassionate, this is a difficult situation. You've made your wishes clear, but your children have a right to contest the will. However, it's also clear that your decision is based on your relationship with Lila and your feelings of abandonment by your children. I nodded. That's correct, Your Honor. He paused, his gaze shifting to my children. I will take everything into consideration. This is a complicated case, and I will review all the evidence before making a final ruling. With that, the hearing was adjourned. The room erupted into whispers as the judge left, and my children stood up, their faces red with anger. I didn't look at them as they left the courtroom. I didn't need to. I had made my decision, and no matter what happened next, I knew I had done the right thing. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control of my own fate. The waiting was the worst part. The courtroom had been silent as the judge left, but in the hours that followed, it felt like the world was spinning just a little too fast. Lila had stayed close, her quiet presence grounding me, but I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. I had made my decision, and I knew it was the right one, but the emotional weight of it all was heavier than I had expected. The judge had promised to review everything, but when would that be? How long would it take? And what would happen when he finally made his ruling? The next few days passed in a blur. I spent my time recovering as best I could from the cancer treatments, while Lila continued to care for me with the same quiet dedication she always had. She was there when I needed her, offering comfort, support, and a kind word whenever I felt the pressure of the legal battle weighing down on me. But even with her by my side, I couldn't ignore the fact that I had lost something irrevocable. My children's anger, so raw, so biting, was something I couldn't forget. The decisions I had made weren't going to just vanish because I had done what was right for me. A few days after the hearing, the phone rang again. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. Mike, I answered, taking a deep breath before speaking. What now, Mike? You've really done it this time, haven't you? His voice was laced with bitterness. Mom, you've destroyed everything. Everything was already destroyed, Mike, I said quietly, but firmly. You've all abandoned me. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to keep pretending that you care just because you're upset about the will. You think we don't care? His voice was raised now, and I could hear the frustration building. You really think we don't care? We've been dealing with you being sick, and now you're just going to leave us with nothing? You don't care about me, Mike. You care about what you can get from me. And I've given enough. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. And I'm not going to feel guilty for making a choice that's mine to make. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could feel my chest tightening with each second. But then, as if on cue, I heard the sound of someone approaching in the background. A familiar voice. Mike, let it go. This isn't going to get us anywhere. Emily. You stay out of this, Emily, Mike snapped. This is Mom's fault, not mine. I felt my pulse quicken at the sound of their voices, each one filled with anger and hurt. And suddenly, it felt like I was right back where I started. Alone, misunderstood, drowning in all the emotions they had left behind. I've already made my decision, I said, my voice quieter now. And no matter how many times you yell at me, it's not going to change. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Mike spoke again, his voice quieter, more resigned. We'll see about that, but I'm telling you. Mom, you're going to regret this. I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. What was left to say? I hung up the phone and leaned back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. The anger was still there, but it wasn't mine anymore. They had their own pain to work through. I had my own. Lila came in a few moments later, her face full of concern. How are you doing? I didn't even try to hold back the emotion. I'm so tired, Lila. I can't do this anymore. Lila sat beside me, her hand resting gently on mine. You don't have to do it alone. I'm right here, Martha. You're not alone in this. I took a deep breath, grateful for her unwavering support. I know, and for that I'm thankful. You're the only family I've got left, and that means everything to me. She smiled, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of peace. But the world outside our small hospital room hadn't stopped. My children were still out there, and the legal battle was still waiting to unfold. It wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning my lawyer called. The judge has made his decision, he said. The ruling will be handed down today. My heart skipped a beat. The moment I'd been dreading and waiting for had finally arrived. Lila stayed with me while we waited for the news. We sat together, my hand in hers, both of us silently anticipating what would come next. The phone rang again. It was my lawyer. It's over, he said, his voice calm. The judge ruled in your favor. For a moment I couldn't process what he was saying. I had won. Your children are not entitled to anything, he continued. The will stands. Lila is the sole beneficiary. I could hardly believe it. After all the pain, all the anger, the heartbreak, I had finally taken control of my life. I looked at Lila, her eyes wide with surprise and relief. We did it, I whispered. She smiled, but there was something in her smile that wasn't just about victory. It was about the peace I had finally found. It was a quiet moment, one of realization that no matter what had happened before, this was the beginning of something new. I couldn't undo the hurt I had caused. I couldn't take back the things I had said, but I had done what was right for me. And now, I was free. The battle was over, and in the end, I had found what I had been searching for all along, peace. The days following the court ruling were strangely quiet. There were no more angry phone calls from my children, no more accusations or threats, just the stillness of a decision made, a line drawn in the sand. I had won, but I wasn't sure I felt like I had. The relief of the victory didn't come in the form I had expected. I had imagined that once the judge ruled in my favor, I'd feel liberated, free to live the rest of my days in peace, without the weight of family obligations hanging over me. But instead, I felt a quiet emptiness. The battle had been won, but I had lost something that could never be replaced. The family I had once known. Lila had been by my side through it all. She was the first one to hug me after I got the news, her smile full of genuine happiness for me. But as the days wore on, I saw a shadow in her eyes, a concern that had nothing to do with the court case. Martha, you've been through a lot, she said one evening as we sat on the small porch outside my hospital room. But I don't want you to feel like this is the end. It's a new beginning. You deserve to live without the weight of that past holding you down. Her words were kind, but they didn't lift the cloud that lingered over me. The house I was left with was empty, too quiet. I spent hours each day thinking about what my children might be doing, whether they were angry enough to keep fighting, or whether they'd let the matter rest. Mike, Daniel, and Emily had not contacted me since the ruling. Part of me hoped they would, perhaps just to say goodbye, to acknowledge the deep hurt I had caused them. But the other part of me, the part that was finally free from their expectations, knew it would never happen. I spent the following days sorting through the things that had once been mine. Family photos, letters, old mementos. There was a strange sadness in doing this alone. The past felt like a different lifetime, one I had been forced to leave behind in order to survive. It was late one evening when the knock on my door came. I wasn't expecting anyone. Lila had gone out for a while to take care of some errands, and I was alone in the house, my mind wandering. The knock was loud, urgent, and I felt a rush of anxiety before I even got to the door. When I opened it, my eldest son, Mike, was standing there. His face was red, his eyes sharp with anger, but there was something else, a weariness that hadn't been there before. "Mom," he started, his voice rough. "We need to talk." My heart skipped. I hadn't seen him since the court case. Had he come to apologize? To ask for forgiveness? The cynic in me told me no, but the mother in me, the one who had spent years trying to fix things, hoping for reconciliation, had a small, foolish hope. I stepped aside and let him in, my pulse racing. Mike walked in without saying anything more, taking a seat in the living room. I sat across from him, unsure of what to expect. My thoughts were scattered. What did he want? What had changed since the ruling? "I'm not here to argue," Mike said, his voice low. "I'm here because I have to say something, and I think you deserve to hear it." I waited for him to continue, the silence between us stretching. "I don't agree with what you did," he continued. "I don't agree with your decision, but I've had time to think, and I get it, in a way. I've been an asshole, Mom. I've let you down. I've been selfish, and I can't undo any of that. I can't undo the hurt we've caused you." My breath caught. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. His words, though harsh, were something I had never expected to hear. I had always imagined my children would never take responsibility for their actions. This wasn't the apology I had wanted. It wasn't even close, but it was something. He looked up at me, his expression hardening again. "I'm not here for your forgiveness. I'm not even asking for it. I'm just telling you the truth. I don't know if we'll ever be a family again. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for how we treated you. But I needed to come here because it wasn't right." I sat there, processing his words. My heart ached, but it wasn't the same ache I had felt before. This was something different, a kind of emptiness that came from finally hearing the truth. Mike stood up, shifting awkwardly. "I'll go now. I just wanted you to know that, whatever happens, I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." And just like that, he was gone. I closed the door behind him, my mind reeling. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand more, but the other part, the part that had spent years waiting for this moment, felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the closure I had imagined, but it was closure nonetheless. My son had apologized, and while it wasn't enough to fix everything, it was enough for me to understand that he had recognized the pain he had caused, and now, maybe, I could finally start moving forward. I wasn't sure if my children would ever come around completely. I didn't know if they would ever truly accept my decisions, or if they'd continue to harbor resentment. But for the first time, I knew that whatever happened next, I had done what I needed to do for myself, and that had to be enough. I woke up the next morning with a strange, heavy sense of calm. The conversation with Mike had shaken me more than I expected, but there was a finality to it that settled deep within me. I had spent years wishing for an apology, for some kind of acknowledgement from my children. And while Mike's words hadn't fixed everything, they had given me something I didn't think I would ever get, an honest admission of guilt. But there was something else, too. Even after the apology, I still felt empty. The void left by my children was never going to be filled, and it wasn't something I could simply wish away. I had tried to love them with everything I had, but it wasn't enough. And now, here I was, on my own, with only Lila beside me. I heard a soft knock on the door later that afternoon. It was Lila, returning from her errands, her face bright and full of life, as usual. The contrast between her energy and the heavy sadness that still lingered in me was stark, but in that moment, I couldn't help but feel grateful. She was the only person who had truly shown up for me when I needed it most. "How was your day?" she asked as she entered the room, setting down her things with a smile. I gave a weak smile in return, but it didn't reach my eyes. "It's been quiet." Lila immediately noticed the change in my demeanor. "What happened?" I hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. Mike came by. Her eyes softened. "And?" He apologized. Lila sat down next to me, her hand gently brushing mine. "That's a big step, Martha. Maybe it's not everything you wanted, but it's something." I nodded slowly, unsure of what to say next. The weight of it all was too much to articulate. I didn't expect it. Not from him. Not in that way. Lila's expression was full of understanding. People don't always show up the way we want them to, but it doesn't mean they don't care in their own way. I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't that I didn't believe Lila. She had shown me care in ways I could never have imagined. But it was hard to let go of the hope that my children might one day truly care, the way I had always wanted them to. "What now?" I asked, my voice a little more fragile than I intended. "What do I do with this?" "You keep going," Lila replied firmly, squeezing my hand. "You keep moving forward. You've made your choice, and you're not alone anymore." The words were simple, but they gave me a sense of clarity that I hadn't had in weeks. I was starting to see what Lila meant. Moving forward wasn't about waiting for things to go back to the way they were. It was about accepting what had happened and choosing to live in the present, no matter how difficult it was. And so, I made a choice. I wasn't going to keep living in the shadow of what I had lost. My children were grown now, and they had made their choices. It was time for me to make mine. The days passed quickly after that. I continued my treatments, pushing through the physical pain, and focusing on the one thing that had kept me grounded: Lila. She was my family now, my daughter by choice. And every day, she proved that she was more than just a caretaker. She was a true friend, someone I could count on no matter what. We spent afternoons together, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes we sat in silence, watching the world outside the window. Other times, we laughed until we couldn't breathe. One evening, as I sat by the window, watching the sun set, I realized how much I had come to appreciate these quiet moments. I had spent so much of my life trying to please everyone else, trying to hold my family together. But now, I was beginning to understand that true peace came from within. Lila came over and sat beside me, her presence comforting. "I was thinking," she said softly, "we should move somewhere together. Maybe get a place outside the city, somewhere peaceful. We can start fresh, just the two of us." The idea caught me off guard. I had spent so much of my life wrapped up in my family's needs, in their demands, that I hadn't thought about what I wanted. And now, for the first time, the thought of a new beginning seemed possible. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I don't want to hold you back from your own life." Lila smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "Martha, you're not holding me back. You're the one who's been there for me when I had no one. I want to be here for you too. We'll make a life together, one that's ours." Her words filled me with a deep sense of gratitude. In that moment, I knew she was right. I didn't have to keep trying to make everyone else happy. For once, I could focus on my own happiness, on what I needed. And in Lila, I had found the family I'd always longed for. And so, we made plans. Together, we began to look for a house, somewhere quiet, somewhere that could be our new home. A place where we could build new memories and leave behind the hurt that had defined so much of my past. The following weeks were filled with small steps forward, finding the right place, making plans for the future. But in each of those moments, I felt a growing sense of peace. The battles with my children, the loneliness, the pain, it was all fading into the past. As I sat in the living room of our new home, looking around at the walls that were still bare but full of possibility, I realized something. This was it. This was what I had been waiting for. Not the approval of my children, not the legacy I thought I had to leave, but this moment of quiet, of new beginnings. And with Lila beside me, I knew I was finally where I belonged. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for anyone else. I was living for myself. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The house felt like a dream. It was small, cozy, and nestled on the edge of town, far away from the noise and reminders of a life I no longer wanted. The rooms were simple, but full of potential, the kind of place where you could make memories without the weight of past regrets hanging in the air. It was quiet here, and it was exactly what I needed. I sat on the front porch one evening, a cup of tea in my hands, the cool breeze ruffling my hair. Lila had gone out for a while to visit a friend, leaving me alone with my thoughts. It had been a week since we'd moved in, and everything was still new. I hadn't yet unpacked everything. There was no rush. We were in no hurry to settle into the past anymore. This was our new beginning, and we were going to take our time. I looked out at the horizon, where the sun was setting in shades of pink and orange. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Lila returned a little while later, her footsteps light on the gravel path. She smiled when she saw me sitting there, and I couldn't help but smile back. "Still soaking in the view?" she asked, sitting down beside me. I nodded. "It's hard not to. It's everything I wanted, everything I didn't know I needed." She chuckled softly, settling next to me and placing a hand on my knee. "I'm glad you're happy here. You deserve it." The weight of her words settled in me like a soft, comforting blanket. For so long, I had searched for approval, for love, from the people who were supposed to care about me most. But in this moment, I realized something important. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need their acceptance. I had found something much better. "Lila," I began, my voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. I don't know if I ever can." She shook her head, her eyes soft and full of understanding. "Martha, you don't have to thank me. I'm here because I want to be. You've given me something no one else has, and that's enough." Her words hit me deeper than I expected, stirring something inside me I hadn't realized was still there. I was so lost before, I confessed, looking out at the view again, trying to steady my breath. I thought my life was over when my family turned their backs on me. I thought I had nothing left. But now, I realize that I've had everything I needed all along. Lila's hand squeezed mine. "You've always had it, Martha. It was just about finding the right person to share it with." I let her words sink in, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. I didn't need my children's forgiveness to heal. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. All I needed was to accept that the family I had built with Lila was real, and it was enough. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, painting the world in a soft, golden hue. The world felt infinite in this moment, full of possibilities. It had taken me a long time to get here. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first, trying to fix relationships that were beyond repair. I had spent too much time focusing on what was missing instead of what I had. But now I understood that the true treasure wasn't in what I lost. It was in what I had found in Lila. When the stars started to appear in the sky, Lila turned to me and smiled. "You know, we've got a whole lot of life ahead of us. Martha, it's a fresh start. Let's make the most of it." And in that moment, I knew she was right. This was my fresh start. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. No more fighting, no more proving myself, no more longing for people who would never truly appreciate me. What mattered now was the family I had chosen, the one who showed up, who cared, who loved me for who I was. We didn't need a perfect past to make a perfect future. We just needed each other. I looked at Lila, her face lit up by the soft glow of the porch light. My heart swelled with something I couldn't quite describe, something that felt like home. "We'll make it work," I said softly. "Together." She nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Always." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I was living. I was free. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened, everything would be okay. The past had shaped me, but it would not define me. And now, with Lila by my side, I was finally ready to embrace the future. It's strange how life can feel so heavy, and yet, in the blink of an eye, everything can change. I had spent so much time waiting for a resolution, for some final answer, but I've learned that there is no one moment that defines everything. No single apology, no court ruling, no confrontation that will bring everything into focus. Life is a collection of moments, of decisions, and they accumulate in the way we live our lives. I woke up this morning with a different kind of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes with solving a problem or making a decision, but the kind that comes with acceptance. I no longer felt like I was fighting to prove something to my children, to anyone. The past was behind me, and I had chosen to leave it there. Lila was already up, as usual, making coffee in the kitchen. Her energy was like a quiet storm, steady and constant, always filling the space with warmth. I could hear her humming softly as she moved about. I watched her from the doorway, my heart swelling with gratitude. She was everything I needed, and I couldn't have asked for a better companion on this journey. "Good morning," I said, my voice still thick with sleep. She turned, a bright smile on her face. "Good morning? Sleep well?" I nodded, walking into the kitchen to join her. "Better than I have in a long time." She handed me a cup of coffee, her eyes warm. "I'm glad. I know it's been a lot, but I think we're finally finding our rhythm here." I took the coffee, savoring the warmth, and looked around at our little home. It was still a work in progress. There were boxes in the corner, some paintings still waiting to be hung on the walls, but it felt like ours, a space where we could just be. "Yeah," I said softly, "I think we are." The days after the court ruling had been quieter than I expected. My children hadn't tried to contact me again, and part of me wondered if they had finally accepted what had happened or if they were still seething with resentment. Either way, I couldn't control it. I had done what I needed to do for myself. Lila had been right about something. It wasn't about fixing everything. It wasn't about trying to repair broken relationships that had already crumbled beyond repair. It was about finding peace in the chaos, about recognizing that I had the power to choose my future, regardless of what had happened before. "Do you ever wonder if things could have turned out differently?" I asked, staring into my coffee cup, the question that had been lingering in my mind for days. Lila set her mug down, her gaze soft and thoughtful. "I think we all wonder that sometimes, but I don't think about it much anymore. What's more important is what we're doing now, what we're building. You're not alone in this, Martha, not anymore." I looked at her, the words she spoke sinking in deeper than I realized. It wasn't the future I had imagined for myself, but it was the one I had now. And for the first time, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't felt in years. "We're building something good, aren't we?" I said, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. Lila smiled back, her eyes filled with something that felt like love, like family. "We are." The rest of the day passed in the same quiet, comfortable rhythm. We worked together, cleaning up the last few things in the house, organizing, putting down roots in a way that felt different from what I'd always known. It wasn't about possessions or money or legacy. It was about creating a life that was filled with love, a life that was ours. Later that evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The world wasn't perfect. I didn't have all the answers, but I was no longer chasing someone else's idea of what my life should be. I wasn't defined by my past mistakes, nor by the decisions my children had made. I was free, and I knew, deep down, that this was the beginning of something beautiful. I had spent too long trying to fix the broken pieces of my past, but now, with Lila by my side, I was learning to let go of the past and embrace the future. And for the first time, I was living fully, without regret. It's funny how life can surprise you even when you think you've seen it all. I had spent so many years battling my own demons, trying to hold on to what was already slipping away. I had wanted to fix everything, to heal the wounds that couldn't be healed, to make my children love me the way I had always wanted. But now, sitting here in our little house with Lila, I realized that what I had been searching for all this time wasn't in the past, wasn't in the fight for approval from those who had long since turned away. What I had been searching for was peace. Lila and I had made this place our home. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. There were still boxes in the corner, and some rooms needed more work than others, but it didn't matter. We had built something real together. We had created a space where we could breathe, where I could breathe. It had taken me a long time to get here. I had spent my life trying to please others, trying to make everyone around me happy, but at the expense of myself. I had sacrificed everything for the people I loved, only to be left in a cold, empty room with no one but myself. But here I was, finally realizing that I didn't need their approval to be happy. I didn't need their love to feel complete. The truth was, I had found a kind of love that was even more powerful, one that was unconditional, built on mutual respect and understanding. Lila had become my daughter, not by blood, but by choice. We had formed a bond that was stronger than anything I had ever experienced, and it was real. It was enough. That evening, we sat together on the porch as we often did, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The house was quiet, except for the sound of crickets in the distance and the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet I had longed for but never knew how to find. "You know," Lila said, breaking the silence, "I never imagined we'd end up here, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. Me neither. I never thought I'd have this. I thought I'd spend my life waiting for something that was never coming. Lila reached over and took my hand. "You're not waiting anymore, Martha. You've got everything you need right here." I squeezed her hand, the words hanging in the air between us. We had both been through so much, and now we had this new beginning, this future that we could shape however we wanted. There were no expectations, no pressure to be something we weren't. It was just us, and it was more than enough. I leaned back in my chair, letting the peace of the moment wash over me. The weight I had carried for so many years was gone now, lifted by the simple act of letting go. The guilt, the pain, the anger, it was all fading, slowly but surely. I had stopped trying to fix everything, stopped trying to force things that were never meant to be, and in doing so, I had found freedom. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. Lila looked at me, her eyes soft and filled with affection. "More than okay. We're going to be great." I believed her. For the first time in a long time, I truly believed her. We didn't need a perfect ending. We didn't need everything to be neatly tied up in a bow. What we had was real, and it was enough. In this quiet little house, in the life we had created together, I had finally found what I had been searching for all along: love, peace, and acceptance. The past no longer had control over me. I was free, and so was my heart. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I had lived my truth, and in doing so, I had found the family I had always wanted. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was all I needed. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.